Tell me about your concepts of what are the parents' roles, and should we hold parents accountable for their children's
Well,
actions?
yeah, it's totally the fault of the state that's educated these people
Everybody's
for
a
10, 15, 20 years.
You said the state. He's saying parents.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what he said.
That's what I'm
The
saying.
parents.
Yeah, the parents, they're wards of the state. The state will take away these kids if they don't have what the state decides that they need subjectively. The state has them 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week for 10, 12, 15, 20 years. And 93% of these people, these educators, and those in the media, are non-Republican. So yes, they're wards of the state, and the state has replaced the father. Most of these shooters were raised in a single-parent household, where the state was the other parent through welfare programs. So yes, they act as their parent,
Okay.
the state, lawless and violent.
Great point. And if we go now switching to the Dayton one, because there's the one where you have some history of very emotionally troubled, psychiatric troubled, as best people that were there have been able to say, yeah, man, this guy's just had behavioral issues and stuff. I've been in the place of counseling families when what looks like maybe an onset of a very serious mental illness. And I've had to tell people, like, look, he's going to turn 18 in a few months. We've got to deal with this now. Because once he's 18, Mom, Dad, you have no place, no authority. And that's because of our government. Okay? We've changed our laws as in regards to intervention in mental health in so many ways. Even husband and wife, it's been devastating.
Tell us about that a little bit, and how does this interact with the proposed red flag laws?
Yeah, and that's the thing. The government has been warned so many times. The Parkland shooter down in Florida, they were warned. I mean, so many times.
Well, the FBI was called.
The San Bernardino shooting, the county offices out there, the guy said, oh, yeah, it looked bad, but, man, they were going to call me racist if I reported it.
The neighbors who were concerned about the San Bernardino shooters.
Yeah, exactly.
The FBI was reported many times Nicholas Cruz in Parkland, but they're too busy trying to frame Trump to pursue mass murder. So I mean, you can't really blame them.
It looks like we need common sense FBI control.
Yeah.
Well, but by the same token, they also had not committed a crime at that point. They had done nothing.
Cruz had, but once again, this is Democratic policy.
Cruz had.
He had violated the rights of many people and committed violent acts, but he was not held responsible by the lawless.
That is absolutely true, and quite frankly, the others lied to get in and should have had a better vetting process to even get in the country than the San Bernardino shooters.
No, the process for what's called civil commitment. It is not criminal law. I've been a part of it, helping, coaching people through it. It's a devastating thing to do because your loved one has not committed a crime, but you know that their behavior poses a clear and present danger to themselves or somebody else. And that's the standard. That, and there's one other that says they're deteriorating so bad.
How does this interact with their rights? This is obviously very difficult to thread. They have certain constitutional rights. Yet they are clearly mentally
it essentially is an affidavit for the equivalent of a search warrant, except we aren't searching their belongings. We're subjecting them to a 72-hour psychiatric hold for an evaluation. And I can say in Oklahoma, as best I still remember it, is they are brought into a psychiatric facility. It's state-run, and they're held there. 2 separate psychiatrists have independent assessments of that person without comparing each other's notes or talking to each other. They both present that evidence before a mental health court judge. And a mental health court is far different. It is one court that's not open to the public. There's the person who files the complaint is allowed to be there, and the patient,
sort of like a hybrid FISA court.
The person being detained, right, and then the person being detained can invite whoever they want.
Is this voluntary detainment?
Or no,
involuntary.
It's involuntary.
It is, but it's based on an affidavit that I have been harmed or I have been threatened with harm, and I do not want to press charges because, and most often it's because it's a loved one, and they want them to actually get the help because they feel like they are not in the right
So
mind.
it's like a typical warrant process, except the one unique caveat that I'm seeing here is that no one is actually, the person accused is not accused of violating the law.
It's called
Yes.
a civil commitment, okay? And all these court records then are sealed because this is somebody's health history we're talking about, and nobody has pressed criminal charges. And once you establish that, yes, there is an established danger here, a threat was made, or a physical attempt, or an actual harm was done.
Well, then there needs to be a criminal charge filed.
That's up to the person who was victimized.
Just like regular
Well, also the
charges.
court should not be allowing anything less, because the problem is that if you don't, my problem with all these red flag laws and the 72-hour hold and all of that is it's unconstitutional.
Okay.
Seems to be that way.
And it's just an easy, it's lazy legislation.
Well, this is a difficult issue. Well, then how would you suggest we address this then?
Well, it is not a federal power. The federal government has no ability to do it. This is state district courts are the only ones, and it's by state law.
Does that make it any more
that they're
constitutional?
doing it.
No, because you
What
still
is the
have the
alternative
rights. The
then,
rights
Aldo?
are individual.
What's the alternative?
Well,
I've got someone that's insane. They hallucinate all the time. They have maybe violent ideations, but they've never broken the law. So what do we do with that?
Never broken the law?
As far as we're aware.
I mean, a disturbing of the peace is somewhat of a
Threatening somebody.
Well,
Yes.
threatening,
No, that's
threatening
breaking the law.
or what? I mean, because it is not a crime to be crazy.
Okay.
It's
It's
not.
not a crime. And the
Well, we
thing
know there are
is-
millions of registered
Okay.
Democrats.
Let me tell you how it works most of the time, Oldham, is it becomes the deterrent from criminal prosecution. Because the person who's usually a loved one wants that person to get well.
Of course.
They see this as a sickness.
Almost a drug court.
They see this as a sickness.
Portugal.
Yeah, except they're not taking drugs. I
Right.
mean, it's like a cocaine high, but they're not taking cocaine. Their brain's just going there.
Their brain's
But
generating
and
the free
it's
cocaine.
to a point of psychosis, to where they don't know what's real and what isn't, and that's a dangerous place.
Sure.
You know, and so what they do then is like, look, we're either going to do this or we're going to go the other direction. And most people, when they're in that situation,
They sign away their rights.
um,
That you have to understand is they have to submit to this judgment, or it's unlawful.
Okay.
It's not lawfully binding.
I've helped with the process, and what normally happens here, more often than not, is they'll say to this person, say, look, we're going to go ahead and process this. However, if you walk in there willfully, an assessment, to where there's not a court action, you don't lose your Second Amendment rights in the event they adjudicate you as mentally unstable. Number one. Number two, you know, you can
And that's just
have
an
a lot
extortion
more
to
say.
get you to go.
Oh,
you want.
sure. I mean, you call it what you want. Whatever you're dealing with a family who wants an intervention.
No, I understand
What's the
that, but-
alternative, though, Holden?
Well, no,
Give
well,
us a
I-
constitutional alternative.
Well, you've got it.
Checkmate.
Well, you've got it. No. It's not that I don't spend my time thinking about it. So demanding an answer on this
No,
phone
no,
moment is
he's
something
just
else.
joking.
I'm giving you a hard time.
But the point is that this takes more thought. How do you do it?
Certainly.
It does need to be, and ultimately, what it comes down to is the subject
It's a difficult
ends
topic.
up the subject ends up submitting and waiving his rights, because that's the only way you can
Okay.
ultimately do it and have it be lawful.
And David Vann has a lot of experience. with
Well,
that.
and you quoted Patrick Henry earlier tonight,
Right.
did you not? Patrick Henry had his wife locked up in the basement because she was psychotic.
Sure.
Yeah. And where was her civil rights?
Oh, she had them.
How?
Well, I mean, I don't know all of the story enough to know
She voluntarily
fully well.
confined?
She said I do.
Well,
This
I don't
would be
know.
better
I don't.
or worse.
No. I don't know the story well enough to be able to comment on it. But
Sheik of
yes,
Saudi
that
Arabia,
was
right?
something. But she was terribly insane.
Yeah.
And I don't remember. And I don't remember if she was even actually motive that she was
Did she
mobile.
break any laws?
Well, she
you know?
physically attacked
Oh,
family members.
Well, there we go.
Physically
There we
attacked.
go.
Once you do
But-
that, you void your right.
But
Sure.
yeah,
You can have them
Patrick
taken away.
Henry knew enough to know, I know who my wife is, and this isn't my wife. This is an ill woman. I love my wife.
Well, I wouldn't say
I've
that
got
we know
my
that's
vow.
what he thought, but okay.
I've read enough of his statements, and
I know he loved his wife,
Okay.
and that's why he took care
Okay.
of her. rather
We
than-
weren't going to finish if we keep interrupting.
Well, he wouldn't send her to the home where he thought he wouldn't send his cattle there.
Right, Williamsburg.
He was quoted as saying, "Give me liberty and a crazy wife," right? Hey, we got to wrap this up pretty quick. Don't forget, though, that this beautiful protection that we have in the Constitution, the Second Amendment, our ability to keep and bear arms protects women and children and gays. I mean, this is very important. Guns protect gays. You hear me?
At the Pulse nightclub.
You're pandering.
When our
now.
immigration
Just
policy
saying.
won't protect gays
If
at
you
the Pulse
prop-
nightclub, guns will.
Hey, let's talk about that. What's going to happen here in 3 more months? Just 3 more months. We're going to have permitless carry in Oklahoma. We'll be all.
It changes nothing for me.
Right. Yeah, Bronzo comes back and he.
I still feel safe.
You
Oh,
know,
no.
but at least now I'll be a
Don't you
little.
brandish that. Don't.
It's not. It's in the
You
holster.
just quit that.
But anyway,
That's
it's going to be interesting to see, people walking down the street, a cop coming, they're smoking reefers, got a gun right there in their hip.
Interesting is a word for it.
Yeah, but in our society is a what? Polite
Polite
society.
one. They might get Rick Hubbarded.
Well, we hope it would be a polite society. It's all too often not.
I think some.
Well, we
nuts
know,
have
and
been-
just to remind people, I mean, for instance, the 9 European countries with the highest per capita gun ownership have the lowest violent crime rate. I'm going to say that again. The 9 European countries with the highest per capita gun ownership have the lowest violent crime rate in all of Europe. And the 9 European countries with the lowest per capita gun ownership have the highest violent crime rate. We see this across every society, across all of history. More guns correlate highly with less crime.
Let's just change the word to firearms. Because in some of them, Switzerland, I think you're required to serve and have a rifle. Right?
They've loosened that up. That's changed. But you're essentially right.
Yeah, rifles we include in that. Yeah, when we say guns.
And guess how safe Switzerland is?
Super safe.
It's a little bit safer than Azerbaijan.
Yes. They have no military. It's the people, the militia.
A
Yeah.
little bit safer than Somalia. Somalia and Baltimore have very similar crime rates.
Yeah.
Folks, you've been with us for 3D Politics. I'm Tom McKay, your host, with David D'Ambroso, David Oldham, and David Van. Be sure and tune in again next week, 7 p.m. for Facebook Live. And on the way out, just on these shooting things, if you have a tendency to try to blame the parents for the actions of the children, let's not forget Oprah Winfrey's story. She had one of the most horrible childhoods you could have, and yet she's still Oprah Winfrey. And if you want to go ahead and continue to blame the parents, remember, we've had 5 generations, about 150 years of public school parents. That's what we have, is public schools have been training the parents to be parents for the last 5 generations. So if you want me to bash parents, they're public school trained parents is what they are.
That's true.
3D Politics Live. We'll see you next week.
And next week we're going to have a story about Medicaid fraud here in our area. Sapulpa's participating.
Yeah.
Medicare fraud.
I'm
Imagine that.
actually getting a message from a Democrat friend of mine that Medicaid fraud is impossible.
Yes.
happen.
And I almost
like-
got a chance to tell you a story what almost happened coming home Saturday night on the roads of southern Broken Arrow.
No, we're not talking about that. I also heard that voter fraud is also impossible.
Okay.
I don't see the off button or I would have ended it.
Yeah.
Check us out next Monday, folks. 3D Politics Live.